Good evening. Welcome to the Bradford County Historical Society. And some of you joined us upstairs. Some of you might be just joining us now, but thank you for coming. On your chair is a little schedule about Friday night at the museum. This is the first one for 2023. And on the back of your schedule, if you turn it over, it says sponsored by the United Way of Bradford County, and that is not the case anymore. So I want to be sure to point that out. Friday Night at the Museum has been sponsored by the United Way for 15 years, as long as I've been here. And this year, we received zero funding for Friday Night at the Museum. So keep that in mind. There's a donation can out there. We got to fund it somehow, people. But nevertheless, we have several, I think, interesting programs coming up this year, but we did one thing a little bit different. And that is in August, we have a tour of architectural and historical places in the western part of the county. We have done that in the past, but not part of Friday Night at the Museum. So this time we did that as a member event, but as part of Friday Night at the Museum, but it'll be on a Saturday. So the point is that for your little card out there, if you pick that little loyalty card up, that you have to be a member in order to get all those things punched for the end of the year drawing. So we snuck that in there on you. But in August, David Lennington, we wanted to organize this tour back before COVID, and then COVID happened, and then we didn't do anything for several years. So we're finally back to be able to do that again, and we're visiting several places in the western part of the county for that tour. We're looking forward to that. I will mention, because we just had an exhibit opening upstairs with Native American artifacts, and there'll be probably some Native American talk tonight in the program, but also next month on your schedule, Rich Goulias, who's here tonight, he will also have a program on Native Americans in Bradford County, and he has collected for many years, and he'll have some of his collection here to share as well. So we're looking forward to that. So the museum is open Wednesday through Friday, 10 to 4, and then the first Saturday of the month, 10 to 2. So feel free to stop by. The research library, of course, is open the same hour. So thank you again. And this evening's program, he's right here. I had to take the mic off the stand because he's much taller than I can reach. But many of you probably came just for Van Wagner, and I understand that, and I don't fault you at all because he's fantastic. So at this time, I'll turn it over to Van Wagner. Thank you.
Thank you. It's great to be back. I don't think many people say that about prison. Well, hey, you Yankee lad, what brings you down this way? Hey, you Yankee boy, it'll be trouble if you stay. Well, I heard you had Lazarus Stewart. He was the leader of the Paxton Boys. But if you ran with trash like that, no wonder you were destroyed. Up in Wyoming Valley, Great Meadow, it spread out, home to the Delaware when the Iroquois allowed. And it's hey, you boy, what brings you down this way? Hey, you Yankee boy, there'll be trouble if you stay. Well, they came from Connecticut and they built their 40 fort, and they claimed it as New England, but the claim fell short. And then men from Pennsylvania with rifles in their hands, from Shamokin to Wyoming to see who owned this land. The Connecticut boys, they stopped them, sharpshooters on the bluff. Pennsylvania then retreated, I guess they saw enough. But this world is a strange one, there's always twists and turns. Indians with tomahawk wiped out the 40 fort. And it's hey, you Yankee boy, what brings you down this way? Hey, you Yankee boy, there'll be trouble if you stay. By then the revolution spread throughout the land. For a while the Indians held Wyoming land. But after the war years, when the treaties all were done, Pennsylvania got Wyoming where the Susquehanna runs. Now this tale is a strange one, our Pennsylvania home, when men from Connecticut, they claimed it as their own. Oh, blood was shed by rifle and sword, and only a few remember our Pennamite War. And it's, hey, you Yankee boy, what brings you down this way? Hey, you Yankee boy, there'll be trouble if you stay. Thank you. Yes, I am a repeat offender. It's my second time in this prison. I couldn't resist. That was the best one I could think of driving here tonight, Matt. On one hand, I see a lot of familiar faces, and that makes me feel real good, but I also love seeing new faces. So whether you've seen me before or not, I tried to pick a group of songs that there's something for everybody. So that whether you've heard me before or not, I have some new stuff you haven't heard, or I'll try and put a new, layer of, or shed some new light on it that I haven't maybe showed you before. And if you're brand new, well, then I'm safe either way. I write a lot of songs about Pennsylvania history. I think that's what is the connection between Matt and I and why our friendship goes so deep. So I love writing songs about Pennsylvania history. But I also write a lot about wildlife, and so you'll hear some of that in the themes tonight. Very passionate about the outdoors. In fact, if I look a little pink, it's because today I took 30 teenagers on a canoe trip from Bloomsburg to Danville. It was a field trip. It was great. I knew I was doing something right when we got to Bloomsburg this morning at 8 a.m., and there was another boy from our school there with his boat. I said, "You're not part of my class." He goes, "I know, I skipped school. I want to be on a trip today." That really happened. Let's go to the anthracite coal region quickly. This is a song about Luzerne County. True story, took place in 1897. It's called the Latimer Massacre. 1897, a cold September morning. And there's something in the air today that's chilling me to the bone. Looking out my shack window up by old number 9, I could see some men a-gathering as the fog takes its time. Well, there's wives and kids off to the side and they're waving as they go. There must be 350 of them coming down the road. So I hollered out to one of them, "Hey, what you marching for?" He says, "We're marching out of this town and on to Latimer." Said, "We're marching on for liberty in this land of the brave and free. I'm sick of living my life like a piece of machinery." He said, "Son, I'm sick of living like a second-class human being. We ain't asking for charity, just a little equality." Well, the fog finally rolled away and the sun rose to its peak. Someone said 10 miles have passed beneath our feet. And we come from many countries, yes, many foreign lands, but we're waving old stars and stripes to show we're Americans. And then just around Hazelton, up stepped Sheriff Martin. He said, "You've come far enough, boys, go back to where you come from." Well, there wasn't no stopping in these men's eyes. You could see right to their soul, their hearts filled with freedom and their lungs filled with coal. Said, "We're marching on for liberty in this land of the brave and free. I'm sick of living my life like a piece of machinery." "Ah, son, I'm sick of living like a second-class human being. We ain't asking for charity, just a little equality. So the men marched on to Latimer, believing all was fine. Sheriff Martin had him 100 men, and they were waiting down the line. They were armed with the sheriff's rifles. He had deputized 100 men, while not a single marcher held a weapon in his hand. And the sheriff opened fire, and the flag fell to the ground. It's as if God went deaf that day amidst that dying sound. I ain't never seen nothing like it, and I hope I never do again. It's a sin that a dollar weighs more than a man. So for the 19 men that died that day, won't you reach into your soul? Tell me, who are the real Americans in this story that we hold? Is it the thugs with the rifles and the badges on their chest, or those who marched for freedom and lay in eternal rest? Said we're marching on for liberty in this land of the brave and free. I am sick of living my life like a piece of machinery. Ah, son, I'm sick of living like a second-class human being. We ain't asking for charity, just a little equality. We ain't asking for charity, just a little equality. I'm a forester with the Society of American Foresters, and I started a project about 3 months ago. I was out in the woods one day, and I thought it'd be kind of fun to go to the highest point in every county in Pennsylvania, and then when I get there, climb the highest tree. So I started that back, well, there was still snow on the ground, so last week in some parts of Pennsylvania. No, but it was, I believe it was February, I can't recall exactly. And what I usually do is when I get there and I climb to the highest tree, I take a camera up with me and I have a little reflection moment and I talk about something about that county. And the highest point in Luzerne County, even though that song was all about Hazleton, the highest point in Luzerne County, Ricketts Glen State Park. It's this little corner into the game lands up there. But when I did that climb, I dedicated that climb to the memory of those 19 men and their families. Just an incredible part of our American story. This is a song that kind of connects Towanda to Marietta. Okay, this is a song called Crosscut Saw. And in the late 1700s, a whole new economic practice began here on the Susquehanna River, which was taking white pine out of our mountains and valleys and rafting it to the market. And Marietta was the market. There were other places, but Marietta was the big. That was, if you could get your logs to Marietta, you made something most farmers don't make, money. Okay, so that's what they were trying to do. And make no mistake about it, our north branch of the Susquehanna River was absolutely a rafting river, and it had its time as the biggest lumber producer in America as well. The west branch, you know, they came a little bit later, and Williamsport gets a little bit more fame, but we did it first. And so this one is going to dance back and forth between the two branches. So you will hear mention of Loyalsock Creek and West Branch watershed. But this is talking about taking pine logs from our area down to Marietta and selling them. So my connection back to Towanda. Stephen Foster had, I believe, a sister that lived in Marietta. Now, why would I mention that? Because the whole economy down there in Marietta was these bridge runners and river rats coming down every spring, selling their logs and walking home. And it was the economy. It really was the economy down there. And a few years after, I believe, he left Pennsylvania, he wrote a song. All right? And I've never found proof of this, but I really think the original lyrics went, well, I come from Pennsylvania with a banjo on my knee, and I'm going to Louisiana. Because people in western Pennsylvania did that. They went down the Allegheny River to the Ohio, to the Mississippi, to Louisiana, and they'd go home to Pennsylvania. I don't know, I know I'm stretching here. I'm stretching it. I've never found that written anywhere or suggested, but when I sing that, to me, that makes a whole lot more sense of what he would have seen, what his sister would have seen on the Susquehanna River. Alabama to Louisiana doesn't sound terribly exciting. I don't know why that's the version that we all grew up learning. Maybe that's what he wrote. Who am I to question it? But here's one I know I got the words right, too, because I wrote it. This is called Crosscut Saw. Well, the war, it was over, Mr. Lincoln had won. I drew my Navy wages and returned to my home, to Sullivan County where my grandfather came. The soil was rocky and the sky always rained. I remember Grandpa's stories of when he was a kid, of bison and some lowlands and elk on the ridge. But now they're all gone and a new hunt has begun, to find the Tiadaghnet and make the sawmills hum. All I need is my crosscut saw, my double bit axe and 80 trees to fall. The spring, it's coming, I can smell it all around, and my soul's being tempted by that high water sound. Up on the Loyal Sock, it is straight and it's tall. There is pine up there like you ain't never saw. Only brave loggers bear the winter cold, and the snow falls heavy on our Appalachian fold. Well, it's up in the morning at 5 a.m. Throw down some biscuits, some coffee and ham. A 12-hour shift with the teamster crew, skidding logs to the water through the ice and snow. All I need is my crosscut saw, my double bit axe and 80 trees to fall. The spring, it's coming, I can smell it all around, and my soul's being tempted by that high water sound. Well, we lash our logs together with hickory and oak. No rope, no iron, just pins and bows. A sweep at the front and back and a shack for the crew. 20,000 board feet, ready to tie loose. When the ice finally breaks and the water's good and high, we'll head down the Loyal Sock, our crew of 5. A day on the raft down to Montoursville. We hit the Susquehanna where the water's smooth and still. All I need is my crosscut saw, my double bit axe and 80 trees to fall. The spring, it's coming, I can smell it all around, and my soul's being tempted by that high water sound. Once we get to Marietta, we sell off our logs, $100 split by 5 river hogs, and we head back north, walking all the way, with a hand on your knife and the other on your pay. Well, if it's a good season, we'll have 2 or 3 more runs, then this year is over and summer has begun. I'll watch as the rust, it builds on my tools, long for the day I'm back with my logging crew. All I need is my crosscut saw, my double bit axe and 80 trees to fall. The spring, it's coming, I can smell it all around, and my soul's being tempted by that high water sound. Brought something special tonight. So, this is a cowboy hat, right? Iconic symbol of the West, right? Invented by John B. Stetson of Pennsylvania. So I'm reclaiming this thing. My wife's like, you look ridiculous in that thing. I kind of feel weird in it because I'm not a cowboy, but this is it. This is Pennsylvania This is Yingling and Woolrich as much as anything else. Pierogies and whoopie pies and Stetson hats. Now, this is not a Stetson. I'm not that much of a high roller. It's a Rodeo King. About a third of the price, but... So I'm going to sing you a brand new song I only recently recorded about John B. Stetson's hat. And just like the name Wyoming, we can't let those Westerners take everything from Pennsylvania and claim it as their own. You know, we got the Pennsylvania long rifle. It went to Kentucky, and now it's the Kentucky long rifle. We need to stop this, folks. It's just going to keep... He walked in wearing a cowboy hat, Philadelphia under the brim. Dressed to kill, he was looking sharp, all eyes set on him. A Pennsylvania boy in a cowboy hat, it's a natural thing. Inside the very first cowboy hat was John B. Stetson's name. John B. Stetson, his name was on the brim. The cowboy hat that defined the West, it was a Pennsylvania thing. The bloody Civil War ended, it was 1865. Over 500,000 men were dead, but 15 million were alive. Oh, the country was growing west and growing fast. To top it off, on their heads they wore a John B. Stetson hat. John B. Stetson, his name was on the brim. The cowboy hat that defined the West was a Pennsylvania thing. Rodeo King or Bailey's or American. And when you pass a lady, you always tip your brim. Thanks to Abe Lincoln, felt became the rage. For up till then it was beaver skins, and he saved them from the grave. John B. Stetson, his name was on the brim. The cowboy hat that defined the West was a Pennsylvania thing. I think I'm going to play the whole rest of the concert with the hat on. You heard the reference to Abe Lincoln and the felt. Here's my understanding of that. Until Abe Lincoln made a fashion statement with a felt hat, America was crazy about beaver skins. You know, if you didn't have beaver skins, I don't know if I can do this with a hat. I got to remove. There we go. Yeah, so our pressed beaver fur hats were the rage until all of a sudden Abe Lincoln comes out with felt, pressed felt, and then beaver skins were just so 2000 late at that point. We have not changed a bit, people. But the irony there is he probably saved the beaver from total extinction. Not that he set out to do it. I don't even think he was even conscious. It was just American public was caught up with like, oh, this politician, they're crazy about him. Everybody likes a great lost treasure story. And this is a Susquehanna lost treasure story. I first heard it probably in the 1980s. I was a Boy Scout. We were on a camping trip. Sitting around the campfire, our scoutmaster pulled out a book, and he told this story. And I remember as a kid thinking, well, if it came from a book, it's got to be true. And here we are today. This particular legend is the legend of Blackbeard. And as you'll hear in the song, the origins go back to a sunken ship down in the Chesapeake. It was claimed by England. And this privateer got a contract to reclaim the silver bars on board. And the legend has it that he got the silver, and then the War of 1812 broke out, and here he is in the middle of, Yankee land, and he's got English silver. So this is where the story gets weird. The legend is, so he went up the Susquehanna and hid the silver bars somewhere in the mountains where no one would find them. Let's just sing the song. I made up the song. I didn't make up the story. Well, if I had the money of Blackbeard, maybe up on the Cinnamon, I would load my canoe with that silver, and I'd float the whole way home. But I'd have to go easy at Keating, just below the Mushannon Falls. But once I got to Renova, I'd have the river all to my own. Well, I was never one for dowsing, but hey, what can it hurt? I would trust those copper wires to lead me to pay dirt. I would stake my claim in some holler off of the beaten path. I would follow the feel of that captain, for I too have had a beard of black. Now some they say that I'm crazy to believe in this Baltimore tale of British silver sent northward and buried along some trail. But the Susquehanna holds secrets, any riverman can tell you this. It is not a question of if but when, 'cause brother, I'm bound to be rich. Yeah, well, hey, who am I fooling? Me and money never got along. I wouldn't know the first thing of riches or what to do with silver bullion. But I'd like to think if I found it, I would share it with all of my friends. If silver went up the Cinnamon, it's coming downstream in the end. Special instrument tonight. If you were here last year when I performed, you got to see this. This is the oldest stringed instrument on the planet. It is called a mouth bow. And I made this one, but the origins are obviously from a hunter's bow. These are found really with just about all cultures on every continent. So yes, this is a North American, Native American thing, but these are also Asian, African, European. And in fact, there's a beautiful cave painting in France. It has been carbon dated to something like 10 or 12,000 years ago, and in it, it shows an extinct plains bison herd. Not plains, what are they called? Steppe bison. They're extinct. And in the painting, there are these hunters hunting the steppe bison, but one of them is playing his bow. It's very clear as day that they were using him as a musical instrument even at that time. And because the artwork was done with charcoal, they could carbon date it. So you don't need to get fancy. If you have kids in your life, please get experimenting with these, because we live in one of the last places where people still play these. Last I looked it up, the one resource I saw, it said the only two places where people still play the mouth bow is Papua New Guinea and the Appalachian Mountains. Papua New Guinea's like, I don't know, it's past Shamokin, put it that way. I don't know, it's out there. So I'm gonna give you my best mouth bow sound. This is what you're about to hear. All of our ancestors used to hear at one time or another. In fact, when Europeans and Africans were coming to America, this is the only stringed instrument they heard Native Americans playing. They certainly had woodwinds, you know, they played flutes and things, but in terms of stringed music, this was it. We'll catch a fish in the Susquehanna, catch a fish in the Susquehanna, catch a fish in the Susquehanna, sit on the bank in the mud and the sand. Well, cast your lure and sit and float, cast your lure and sit and float, cast your lure and sit and float. I've seen those fish jump in the boat. Isn't that fun? There's not too many other musical instruments you can play and then go shoot dinner with. But there you are. Now, I cheated a little bit, and I've just put metal binder. That might be a guitar string, but the first one I ever made, it was just binder. I got some chicken wire, and it came with extra like wire to wrap it. And that's all I used for my first one, and it worked great. Some people like round, so this is flat wood. But you can use a round stick, as long as it's green, right? If you use a dead stick, it's just going to snap. But if you use green wood, put it under tension. But kids can make these things. So I'm hoping to get kids playing with them and experimenting with them because it's just fun and weird all at the same time. I had a kid, I went to a camp and showed kids how to make them, and one boy, I mean, he made one like that tall. And I was like, what are you doing with that? He goes, I'm making a bass cannon. I was like, boom, boom, boom. But there's a big mystery to it. I've now made, I don't know, 20, 30 of these things, and I can't figure out what the scientific, recipe for success is. I thought, oh, well, it's the type of wood. I've had the same pieces of wood not work, and then, like this one's oak. Oak shouldn't work, and oak's currently my best sounding one. I've tried different lengths. I've tried different tensions, and I'm really striking out. It's just a big mystery to me. I still have not figured out, other than just keep making them. I don't know what else to do. So I'm going to put the mouth bow down, and I'm going to switch to another special instrument. I brought all kinds of special stuff for you tonight. In fact, the one I'm about to play next leaves the house even less often than this one. This is something very special. I knew Matt would have brought together a nice group of people that would appreciate this, and that's the only reason I brought it tonight. True story. My music is appreciated at different levels at different parts of the state, I notice. And when I performed just 1 week ago in almost near Philly, other than my wife, I had 3 people show up. And she's like, well, you don't seem too, I thought you'd be more upset afterwards. I'm like, well, I'm going to Tawana next week. The room's going to be full. I know it will be. So I can't wait to tell her about you all when I go home. This is a very special guitar to me, and the song will tell the story. But I'll just leave it at that. Some guitars are special, more than a tune. You feel it when you play them, grab a hold of you. It's bigger and deeper than the wood and strings. Guitars, like people, are beautiful things. A man loved his daughter, you know she loved him. She wanted a guitar to play and to sing. Jacob's ladder, good night, Irene. If she had a guitar, she could play them for him. Good night, Irene. Good night, Irene. In 1956, Christmas was near. He went to the city for something better than Sears. He picked out a good one, a Gibson LG. Brought it back home to go under the tree. Two weeks before Christmas, this man passed away. Families' hearts were broken. There's not much else to say. Losing a father, it's gonna take some tears, but I cannot imagine Christmas that year. Good night, Irene. Good night, Irene. When Christmas came, the presents were few. The girl's mother said, I have something for you. Your father picked it out with his own hands. Your father loved you. He was a very special man. Well, decades later, that girl became my aunt. I never knew my grandfather, but I know his hands. He gave her the Gibson and gave her his heart. Here I am singing this same guitar. Good night, Irene. Good night, Irene. I believe it was made in 1954, and I think the coolest part is this is the original strap. I'm glad you're as amused as I was. It's like, wow. My kids were like, well, the picture of it looks black and white. I thought everything was black and white, Dad. I may not have it on me, but I'll look. There's a really cool picture of my mom and her sisters and her brother in 1956, and they're all playing. My mom's on the piano, aunt's on the accordion, uncle's on a ukulele, and Aunt Joan is playing this exact guitar, and like, so I'm glad you got to see it. It's really a special one. Let's go to this instrument. Gonna head out on the river again. Did I get some color today? Okay. I haven't looked in the mirror yet. Ran home and got cleaned up and threw some dinner in and ran down the river. But I had a student catch me at the end of the day, and they went, whoa, you don't believe in sunscreen. So that's all I know. I'm like, am I that bad? The north branch of the Susquehanna River and then the main branch from Sunbury down is the only river in the world where people used to dig coal out of the river for a living. Now, I had someone correct me and go, well, no, they did it in Philly, in the Schuylkill, and the Delaware a little bit. So, okay, it's one of two rivers in the world where people dug coal. And here's why. Anthracite coal is hard enough that when we'd mine it and you'd stockpile it by a railroad depot, a flash flood would come, and that whole pile would wash into the Susquehanna River. It wouldn't pulverize and turn to just dust and wash out to ocean. It got smaller. I mean, it eroded, and it became these round chunks of coal that would wash down river. And somewhere in the 1800s, people got wise and started realizing there's millions of dollars worth of coal in that river because of sloppy mining in Wilkes-Barre, Scranton, and then anywhere you hit like a watershed that brought in a new, influx of, let's face it, pollution. With it also came a whole lot of coal. So Shamokin Creek, recharged it for all the way down to Liverpool. The Swatara Creek would recharge it all the way down, you know, past Hershey and on out to the river. So when did it stop? Pardon me. When did people stop getting river coal? My research took me to the year 1996. I found a newspaper article that said, you know, Bucknell University had placed their last ever order of river coal for their steam plant. It's how they heated the dorms and made hot water, I understand it. And then they switched to natural gas. And that was the last time, at least on a big scale, anybody was buying it. And that made me feel better, because I remember it in my childhood. I even remember it in the 90s. You know, I remember seeing those things still running. So I published that in the newspaper, and, you know, I thought I was right. And one day I'm at the post office, and this kind of gruff fella in front of me, I think he even had a wad of tobacco, and, you know, he turned around and he goes, "Are you that guy that wrote that article about river coal?" And I thought, oh, man, here it comes. I must have gotten something wrong. And he goes, "Well, you're absolutely right, because I worked at Bucknell's power plant, and when they switched over to natural gas, you know, we all started having all kinds of problems. It was 1996, and he explained the whole thing. I said, well, why river coal? Like, what made it good for Bucknell? He said, we mostly used bituminous coal. I said, well, what's that got to do with river coal? He said, we'd get railroad hoppers in of bituminous coal, and we'd put it in our hopper, and if it was damp, it would freeze solid in the winter, and we couldn't run it into the auger. But he said, we found if we put that round river coal and blended it with the bituminous coal, the hopper wouldn't freeze up. That's just good old Yankee ingenuity right there. They didn't Google that, folks. They figured it out. Anyway, I'm just sharing this with you because as I look around, there's many folks my age in the room or older, and I bet a lot of us remember those barges on the river. If you drove to Harrisburg in the 80s or early 90s, you probably saw them. They looked a lot like the Millersburg Ferry. So, in fact, my understanding is several of the folks that work on the Millersburg Ferry have origins going back to the coal digging days. And I haven't done this yet, but I'm told that once a month, a gathering of old coal diggers happens at Hilscher's. You know where Hilscher's is, I hope. If you've driven down 1115, it's like the coolest, like, I don't know what you call it. If they don't have it, you don't need it, put it that way. I mean, they got clothing, whoopie pies, tools, everything. So anyway, these old timers get together and they just tell stories about the river once a month. And I don't know the day of the week or any of that, but if you're really into that, a simple phone call to the restaurant folks at Hilscher's, they'd probably be able to tell you. They could tell you what table they sit at, I bet. So let's go out on the river now. This is called the Hard Coal Navy, and that is the nickname that these folks called it. The Hard Coal Navy was the nickname for all these folks that dug coal out of the river. And just to be clear, I want to make sure you hear this when you leave tonight. This was not a natural phenomenon. I get asked that a lot. This was sloppy mining and then flash floods that would wash the coal in the river. And these guys were just picking it up for free. What do you think the coal companies thought about that? Right, what amazes me is it's one of the only times in Pennsylvania history where the big guys lost in court against the little guys. These little river rats, you know, like they kept going. And I'm amazed because there's a lot of other Pennsylvania history lessons where the big guys would just squeeze the small producer out of the market. So for that reason alone, I want to remember these guys. On the banks of the river, rusting away, a barn-red coal barge is all that remains. And it hasn't touched the water except for a couple floods, and it's loaded up with river coal, Susquehanna mud. Up in Wyoming Valley, Nanticoke and East, the collieries wash their anthracite in the rivers and the creeks. Some coal was lost to the river, and it washed downstream and west, and it settled in drifts just like snow behind a fence. Oh, the Hard Coal Navy, it hasn't sailed for years. Quiet are the engines of the old paddle wheels. They know it's still down there, they feel it in their souls. Those captains still longing to go dredging for coal. There were hundreds of barges when dredging was at its peak, harvesting coal that would have washed out to sea. It was loaded on conveyor, it was rounded like a beet, and sold up and down the river for cook stoves and heat. But they've all left the river now, regulations strict. Those pages of paperwork have just grown too thick. Perhaps it's for the best, for the health of the stream, but I must admit I miss that old paddle wheel fleet. Oh, the hard, cold Navy, it hasn't sailed for years. Quiet are the engines and the old paddle wheels. They know it's still down there, they feel it in their souls. The captain's still longing to go dredging for coal. Now sometimes with my family, we head out on the waves. A 5-horsepower Johnson on the river for the day. We got galvanized buckets and they're waiting in the hall. We pick the bank by hand, it's that same river coal. Oh, the hard, cold Navy, it hasn't sailed for years. Quiet are the engines of the old paddle wheels. They know it's still down there, they feel it in their soul. The captain's still longing to go dredging for coal. So I told you I'm climbing to the highest point in all these counties. You're wondering, first of all, does anyone know how many counties there are in Pennsylvania? 60. You are my kind of audience. I'm at 14, but tomorrow morning I'm doing Cumberland County, and then tomorrow at noon I'm doing Adams County, and tomorrow at 4:30 I'm performing at the Maryland Iron Festival. So I don't know what of all of those I'm most excited about, but that sounds like a fun day for me. That's the kind of stuff I live for. I wish my wife was up for coming, but she's like, that's too much driving for me, honey. But what I'm finding is the ticks are horrible this year, and a lot of what I have to do is bushwhack. So we'll see. I think what I'm going to be doing is turning it up every winter and turning it back down in the summer months and doing less, because when I did Huntingdon County just a few weeks ago, I've never had so many ticks on my body in my life. It was just unbelievable. Just unbelievable. You can watch all these videos, by the way. I post them all on my YouTube channel, so if you have a county you're passionate about, search that and my name, highest point, you can see if it came up or not. But I'm not going to sit here and list them all that I've done right now because I don't even remember. I have not done Bradford County yet. There's a little controversy on the area, believe it or not. You have 3 high points. That is so Bradford County. Can't agree on anything. Just kidding, but... No, but I'm hearing a lot of Armenia Mountain, but there's a few other contenders, so I'm not sure which I'll settle on. Sometimes it comes down to access point, right? If it's private property and I don't even know where to begin, and then there's a game lands that's 3 feet lower, I'm going to take the game lands, considering I'm climbing a 120-foot tall tree, you know. So now this will shock you. The highest point in Potter County, I mean, come on, Potter County. I want you to close your eyes and picture Potter County. It was a soybean field. I was not ready for that, right? The most famous county, I think, of the northern tier, when people think Potter County, they think of woods and deer hunting and woods and woods and woods. And there were no trees at the highest point. But I found along the farmer's hedgerow a couple sugar maples that there wasn't much left of them. They were all hollow inside, and the wind was blowing, and I went up. I'm going to dedicate a song to my friend Alf, who's been a great supporter of my music, and he asked for this song. It's called You Can't Force a Mule. And I just love mules. I was not at all sorry that you requested this song. I love mules. My FFA project with my students for the Bloomsburg Fair is mule-oriented, so I'm not going to tell you much else. But mules, if you come to the Bloom Fair this fall, look for the mule. He was raised in the mountains on his family farm. His dad taught him how to plow a field. He walked behind the plow with his hands on the reins. He'd plow the mountainside and get her tilled. He worked in the woods, skidding logs with the mules, oak and maple down to the sawmill. His mules were so smart they would jump out of the way if a log got to rolling down the hill. You can't force a mule, you can't force a mule, buddy, they are smarter than you. If you spend time with animals, you'll find it to be true. You can force a horse, but you cannot force a mule. Guitar part. He often worked till dark, sometimes miles from his home. But the mules knew the way back to the farm. He could unhook the mules and let go of the reins, and they would walk back home and into the barn. He said, man, you should have seen it when we'd give 'em all new shoes. We would paint each hoof with pine tar. Those mules would trot around feeling proud and feeling new. They were ready to work and work hard. You can't force a mule, you can't force a mule, buddy, they are smarter than you. You spend time with animals, you're gonna find it to be true. You can force a horse, but you cannot force a mule. Guitar part. I heard it was the same down in the mines. The mules knew the limit they could go. Some miners tried to trick them and they would add one more ton, but the mules would not try to pull the load. Well, his working years are over, but his memory is strong. I'm so grateful that he told me of his mules. We shook hands and parted, and I grabbed my guitar and I played him the Mule Skinner Blues. Oh, you can't force a mule, you can't force a mule, buddy, they are smarter than you. Spend time with animals, you're gonna find it to be true. You can force a horse, but you cannot force a mule. Going home. And that is a true story that I heard from multiple coal miners in the era of mule mining. They said those mules were so smart that if you ever tried to hook up an extra coal cart, they wouldn't even pull. And I remember the one fellow. These fellers are all gone. I mean, the mule era was pretty much done by World War II. So I'm thinking back to in the 1990s when I was still lucky to find some old timers that remembered mules in the mines. Some of you might remember them on farms, but in the mines they're pretty much gone. So, yeah, this one fella, he said, this mule was so smart, he said, I went back there as quiet can be, and I hooked up that last cart, and she would not pull. And I tried everything. He said, I finally went back, and the second I lifted that pin out of the buggy, she took off. Like, just incredible animals. I got to tell you about this high climb that's coming up. Philadelphia County has a high point. It's at a place called Chestnut Hill. And I couldn't have picked a better location because it's private property galore. And when I plotted it, it's smack dab in the backyard of a church. So I'm reaching out to the church to say, hey, if I can come down and do some special music during worship, could I climb your tree after church? Philly, like, it's great. And I bet you they're going to be old trees, you know, like that could be a 400-year-old oak tree or something. But listen to this. So I get a message online from a group of like hobby tree climbers. These guys who are like on weekends, we like to climb trees. So I realized, oh, I'm not the only weirdo in the world. And they said, can we join you? I said, yeah. You know, how many of you guys are? They said, some weekends there's 10 plus or minus. I said, that sounds great. He said, but the guy goes, we got to warn you, we also like to take musical instruments with us when we climb trees. He didn't even know I was a musician. There's something for everybody in Philly, apparently. You put enough people together. So anyway, isn't that crazy? He really didn't know I was a musician. So they climb trees on weekends, and then they have jam sessions up in the trees. So whether or not I'll do that, I don't know. I think I need to, don't I? I'll take the mouth bow or something. Unless I figure out that nose harp that you gave me. You gave me a beautiful instrument tonight. I got to figure it out. Let's do one last song here. I'm going to have you sing it with me. This is a pretty song. It's not a song I wrote. It was credited to Hughie Leadbelly, born in 1880s in Louisiana. And Leadbelly was really an amazing songwriter, just an incredible story to his life. And he wrote this beautiful song that was kind of forgotten And in his latter years, it might have even been after his death, his friend Pete Seeger took it to his band, the Weavers, and said, y'all ought to hear this song. And they had a #1 hit with it on the eve before rock and roll exploded in this country. And the song is Goodnight Irene, or Irene Goodnight. And I want to share it with you because it had a connection with that song I sang earlier about my mom's sister's guitar. My mom says in the 50s that was a song that she and her sisters would play. It was just such a beautiful song, and they all played it. And one night I was up in my room as a teenager, and I'm playing Leadbelly's version, and I hear my mom singing in the kitchen. I'm like, how does she know Leadbelly songs? So I went down, like, how do you know Leadbelly? She goes, Lead who? I don't know what you're talking about. She goes, that's a Weaver song from when I was in high school. So it's a beautiful song. I'm going to sing it to you, and you know what? I'm going to sing it on the special guitar. Hold on. But I'd like to invite you to sing with me. If you've never heard it, you'll catch it by the second verse, or the second chorus anyway. We only know this song because of his friend Pete Seeger, I said. And Pete Seeger loved the value and strength of bringing people together and having them sing a song together. And so I think in memory of both of those guys, they would appreciate us doing Leadbelly's song, but all of us singing together. What a great way to connect this evening. It goes like this. Irene, good night. Irene, good night. Good night, Irene. Good night, Irene. I'll see you in my dreams. Sometimes I live in the country. Sometimes I live in town. Sometimes I have a great notion to jump in the river and drown. Here we go. Irene, good night. Irene, good night. Good night, Irene. Good night, Irene. I'll see you in my dream. Stop rambling. Stop your gambling. Quit staying out late at night. Go home to your wife and your family. Sit down by the fireside bright. Here we are. Irene, good night. Irene, good night. Good night, Irene. Good night, Irene. I'll see you in my dreams. Oh, good night, Irene. Good night, Irene. I'll see you in my dreams. Give yourselves a hand. That was beautiful. Thank you. I'm going to follow the words of that song and go home to my wife and family. So thank you all. decide white or black. Doesn't the bad guy wear black? I don't know. Okay. I can misbehave with this. I'm supposed to be a bad guy.
There you go.